Hey everyone. We are so close to hitting 1,000 subscribers. Please smash that subscribe button and help our unveiled family reach our goal. Thanks to everyone who has already subscribed. We love you. Now to the video.
I didn't think a simple walk could mess with my head the way it did that day. It was meant to be one of those chill meetups where you just stroll, talk, laugh, maybe grab a snack after if the vibe feels right. Nothing intense, nothing too serious. He suggested a nearby park trail that loops around a quiet river, said it was peaceful and easy to talk there. I liked the idea because restaurants feel too pressured sometimes, and this felt more honest. Just two people moving side by side with no expectations. I remember leaving my live feeling calm for once, not overthinking every single detail. The sky was pale gray with soft light breaking through, that awkward in-between weather where it's not cold but not warm either. My phone buzzed with his message saying he was already there, which made me walk faster without realizing. He was leaning against a fence when I got there, hands in his pockets, relaxed posture, like he belonged in that scenic setting. He smiled and gave a small nod, acting like we'd already met before. There was something about his energy that felt slightly off, but I blamed it on nerves and kept it moving. We started walking slowly along the path, trees towering above us, leaves scattered along the ground from earlier winds. He talked a lot about side hustles, quick money ideas, random deals he claimed worked out great for him. I half listened, half watched the joggers pass by, trying to feel the flow of things. The more he spoke, the more I noticed how carefully he chose his words, like he was trying to impress with stories that felt rehearsed. He mentioned item reselling and online drops, saying he always knew how to flip things for profit. I smiled politely, but inside something didn't sit right. It sounded less like ambition and more like bragging over people he'd fooled. Then I saw them. Two figures standing off to the side near the trees, pretending to check their phones but watching us way too closely. At first I thought they were just strangers being weird, but the way they positioned themselves told a different story. They moved subtly when we moved, eyes tracking him more than me. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Seconds later I noticed another pair further down the path doing the same thing. Casual stance, generic clothes, but that still tension in their posture that didn't belong in a peaceful park. I stepped slightly closer to him, trying not to make my suspicion obvious, but his shoulders stiffened too, like he felt it. He kept talking, but his tone changed, shorter sentences, less confidence, eyes flicking toward the figures like he knew exactly what was happening. My mind raced fast, questions piling up with no answers. Before I could even process it fully, everything snapped. The calm of the path shattered when the people watching stepped forward in sync and surrounded us in a way that felt too controlled to be random. The whole energy shifted as they revealed they were undercover police and that he was being detained. Right there in the open, on a casual nature path, like we were part of some crime documentary I never signed up for. My body froze on instinct. They explained quickly and clearly that he'd been tracked for trying to sell fake designer trainers online, tricking strangers into thinking they were real and cashing in on their trust. They stated it like it wasn't even surprising, like he'd been doing it for a while and they finally had enough evidence to step in. My chest felt tight and hollow at the same time. I looked at him and saw panic replace his fake chill. His jaw clenched, eyes darting around like he was searching for an escape that didn't exist. Everyone walking nearby stopped to stare. Whispers floated through the air like gray clouds. This wasn't just awkward. It was humiliating and confusing all at once. I thought about how he'd spoken so confidently about side money and quick deals. The way he bragged about knowing how to flip items fast. Suddenly the puzzle clicked together in the worst way. He wasn't clever. He wasn't business-minded. He was selling lies. He tried to act calm, but his hands trembled, posture breaking with every second. The officers searched his bag and pulled out a box stuffed with trainers that looked polished but cheap on closer look. Even I could tell something wasn't right about them now. People kept staring. Parents dragging their kids away, joggers slowing down, couples whispering. I just stood there feeling like I'd accidentally walked into someone else's downfall. They began to escort him away, still explaining details about fraud complaints and online reports stacking up. He didn't look at me, not properly, not apologetically, not anything. It was like I was invisible now that the truth caught up with him. That silence hurt more than words. The park that once felt quiet and calm suddenly felt unsafe, like even the trees were judging me for trusting moments too easily. I stood still for a second, just watching them walk him further down the path, his confident image crumbling like brittle paper. My phone buzzed with notifications I hadn't even noticed during the chaos. My friends checking in, random alerts, everything continuing like normal while my reality shifted sideways. I slowly turned and walked the opposite direction, every step feeling heavier than the last. Strangers kept sneaking glances at me like I was part of the crowd too, like I somehow helped sell fake trainers to innocent people just by standing beside him. I hated that feeling more than anything. I kept replaying his words in my head. The bragging. The smooth talk. How he framed it all like ambition. It wasn't ambition. It was deception wrapped in confident energy and fake charm. I read the signs all wrong. By the time I reached my live again, the air felt different, like it carried the tension of what just unfolded. I dropped my bag by the door, kicked my shoes off, and just sat there on the floor for a moment trying to breathe normally again. My phone lit up with his name on the screen, messages spilling in fast. Excuses, rushed explanations, emotional lines blaming misunderstandings. I didn't even open them. I didn't want the noise. I didn't want to hear justification. What happened was clear enough. I leaned back against the couch and stared at the ceiling, letting the weight of it all crash slowly instead of all at once. A simple walk that was meant to be light turned into a public arrest and silent embarrassment I never asked for. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those undercover officers stepping forward, their calm, serious expressions, his forced smile slipping away. It replayed again and again like a loop that refused to switch off. Not every bad date is dramatic. But this one felt like a warning disguised as an afternoon stroll. And that's what stuck with me more than anything. The quiet moment before everything fell apart. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel sadness. Just this weird hollow relief that I spotted the truth before getting pulled any deeper into his mess. Sometimes that's all you can ask for.
I don't know why, but I remember feeling weirdly calm that day, like I wasn't even overthinking for once, which is rare. Usually I'd be pacing around my live fixing my outfit 10 times and read our messages like I was studying for a test, but this time I just went with it. He suggested a restaurant that looked pretty nice but not too fancy, the kind of place where you can relax but still pretend you made effort. I like that. It felt normal, safe, easy. She arrived before I did, sitting at a small table near the wall, scrolling on her phone with that casual vibe like nothing could bother her. When I walked up, she smiled and stood to greet me, acting confident and warm, almost like she already knew me. I remember thinking she seemed bold, maybe a little too bold for someone on a first date, but I pushed that thought away straight away. We ordered drinks, started chatting, laughing about random stuff, nothing serious. She kept talking about how much she loved going out to eat, how she hated people who cause drama in public, how she values peace and chill spaces. Looking back now, that part feels almost ironic. But at the time I just nodded along, thinking wow, she's actually cool. The waiter brought our food and everything still felt nice. The lighting was soft, the background music low, people around us minding their business. I even caught myself starting to relax into the moment, like maybe this one wasn't going to end in chaos like half my other dates. Then the vibe shifted so fast it almost gave me whiplash. 2 large security guards suddenly appeared beside our table, blocking the sides like we were about to commit a crime. One of them looked straight at her, not even acknowledging me at first, and motioned for her to stand up. The whole restaurant went quiet in that awkward dramatic way where everyone pretends not to stare but absolutely is. She froze. Her confident posture vanished in seconds, replaced by stiff shoulders and eyes darting around like she was calculating an escape route. I just sat there confused, heart racing, trying to figure out what could possibly be happening. That's when one of the staff pointed toward her and started explaining to the guards that she was banned from the place. Banned. Not overbooked or misseated. Fully banned. Apparently she had caused a massive fight the night before with another customer, screaming, throwing things, creating a full scene that needed several people to calm down. My stomach dropped into my spine. I stared at her, waiting for laughter, denial, a joke, anything. She avoided eye contact, shifting slightly, pretending the floor was more interesting than my face. The restaurant buzzed with whispers and side glances while everything around our table felt like it was under a bright spotlight. The guards repeated that she wasn't allowed on the premises and needed to leave immediately. She tried to speak but her voice cracked, not loud or aggressive at all, nothing like the person they described. But it didn't matter. Their decision was clear. She wasn't welcome here. Seeing someone get called out like that felt unreal. One moment we were joking about random childhood memories, the next moment people were talking about her like she was some troublemaker who had turned the place upside down just hours ago. I couldn't even imagine it. The girl sitting across from me looked calm, composed, almost too easygoing. But now there was this sudden story of chaos attached to her name and face. She slowly gathered her bag, still trying to act like this wasn't as embarrassing as it clearly was. The guards kept their position, waiting for her to move. I could feel the stares from every corner of the restaurant, some curious, some judgmental, some entertained. I didn't know what to say or do. Part of me wanted to defend her, another part of me felt awkward just being next to the situation. I hadn't signed up for dinner and a live drama episode. This was supposed to be chill, not a replay of last night's disaster. As she stood up, she glanced at me briefly, eyes saying everything she wouldn't say out loud. Frustration, embarrassment, maybe even anger at the timing of it all. But that didn't change the reality. The guards walked her away from the table and toward the exit like this had happened many times before. People started whispering again, some pretending to laugh it off, others filming discreetly. I sat there frozen, plate untouched, appetite gone, embarrassment slowly settling in. The waiter approached me quietly, apologizing for the disruption, offering to move me to another table or adjust the bill. I nodded without even thinking properly, my head still spinning. I watched through the glass as she stepped outside, posture tense, head held high like she refused to let the moment break her. But the tension in her shoulders told a different story. Everything felt wrong after that. The music, the chatter, the clinking plates. Nothing felt normal anymore. The energy she brought into the space lingered even after she was gone. I stayed for a few minutes just trying to process what I'd just witnessed. I kept thinking about how she talked about peace and calm, how she claimed she hated drama, how she acted like the kind of person who avoided scenes. And then the reality hit me again. She'd literally caused a massive one the night before in the exact same place. I eventually got up and left, not even bothering to finish the food. Outside, the night air felt colder, heavier, like it carried the awkward weight of what just went down. I checked my phone and saw a message from her already, trying to explain, trying to control the narrative. I didn't open it. I didn't want to hear her version just yet. My head was already full. Walking back to my live, I replayed the entire evening again and again. The smile. The laughter. The stories. The sudden arrival of security. The way everyone looked at her like she was dangerous or chaotic. It all clashed in a way I couldn't fully process. I wondered what really happened the night before. How intense that fight must have been for them to ban her completely and remember her face instantly. I tried to picture her losing control like that and it just didn't match the soft version I met. But maybe that was the point. Maybe that soft version only appears when it suits her. Back in my live, I sat on the edge of my bed staring at my phone screen, still buzzing with notifications from her. I finally opened the message. Long paragraphs, a mix of excuses and frustration, blaming the other person from last night, downplaying the whole situation. It didn't feel genuine. It felt defensive. I didn't reply. Not straight away, not later. I just left it there, unread, letting the whole night settle in my mind. Some dates don't just go wrong. They flip completely on their head and leave you questioning every moment leading up to it. This one felt like stepping into someone else's chaos without warning, like walking into a story that already started before you even arrived. I don't know if she was truly as bad as they made her sound or if the truth sat somewhere in the middle. All I knew was that the peaceful dinner I imagined never existed. It turned into an awkward spectacle I didn't expect and definitely didn't ask for. And that quiet confidence she came in with? Gone the second reality caught up with her.
I remember thinking this one felt too good to be random, like the universe finally stopped clowning me for 5 minutes. The way he spoke in messages was warm but not pushy, funny without trying too hard, and he actually listened instead of replying with dry one-word stuff. When he suggested a small cafe tucked away near the edge of town, I felt that rare something that makes you think maybe this one might not be another waste of time. I took my time getting ready in my live, fixing my hair twice, changing my outfit twice, then laughing at myself for caring so much. But I did. Because this time felt different. I even read our messages again while doing my makeup, smiling at how sweet he sounded, how he kept saying he wanted the day to be chill and easy. I believed him. The cafe was cute in that soft, calm way. Fairy lights above the counter, chalkboard menu, the faint smell of coffee and vanilla drifting through the air. I arrived a little early and walked around outside pretending to check my phone so I wouldn't look too eager. When he arrived, he looked like his photos but somehow softer in real life. His smile was relaxed, confident, like he knew exactly what he was doing. He ordered my drink before I even asked, remembering what I told him days earlier. That small detail made my guard drop way faster than I meant it to. We sat by the window, sunlight brushing our table, and everything just flowed. Stories about childhood, random situations at work, little jokes about stuff that didn't even matter. It felt easy. Suspiciously easy. He kept complimenting me in a way that didn't feel forced. How he liked my energy. How I seemed genuine. How refreshing it was to meet someone like me. I felt flattered, of course I did. Who wouldn't? The more he spoke, the more I felt like I was finally sitting across from someone who didn't mess around. If only I knew. About half an hour into the date, just as I started relaxing into my chair, the cafe door slammed open hard enough to make heads turn. Two girls burst inside, breathless and furious, eyes scanning the room until they locked onto our table. Their faces shifted from panic to pure rage in seconds. The whole place fell quiet. They stormed across the floor, pointing straight at him, their voices loud and sharp, claiming he was their boyfriend and that he'd been taking them on the exact same date all week. They described the same drinks, the same corner table, the same compliments he'd been feeding me like they were special. The air cracked with tension as they stood there, exposing everything. My heart almost stopped. He froze. The guy who seconds ago looked like my perfect first date now sat stiff, mouth slightly open, eyes darting like he'd been caught in a trap he didn't plan for. His confidence drained quicker than I could process what was happening. People around us whispered, stared, pulled out their phones, soaking in the chaos like free entertainment. The barista stood still, unsure what to do. I felt heat rise through my face. Embarrassment, disbelief, confusion, all crashing at once. The girls were furious but also hurt. Their hands shook as they gestured toward him, exposing how they found out he'd scheduled the same cozy cafe meeting again and again. I started piecing it together too fast. The way he remembered my order. The smooth words. The compliments. It wasn't charm. It was rehearsed. I wasn't special. I was slot number 3. My chest tightened with every second. I tried to stay calm, but inside I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. I glanced at him, waiting for some sort of reaction, explanation, anything that made this less humiliating. But he barely moved. He just sat there, silent, caught, like a broken actor forgetting his next line. The girls didn't look at me like enemies, more like victims recognizing another victim. And that somehow hurt even more, knowing we all fell for the same polished script. I slowly pushed my chair back and stood, feeling the weight of every eye in the cafe burn into my skin. Everything that felt magical 10 minutes ago now felt fake and dirty. The laughter. The compliments. The sweet energy. It was all part of some twisted routine he perfected. He mumbled something under his breath, trying to calm the situation, but I didn't want to hear it. I grabbed my bag and stepped away from the table, refusing to be part of whatever performance he had left. As I walked toward the exit, the girls kept venting their frustration, explaining how they caught on when they compared details after getting suspicious. The same table. The same words. The same little laughs. It made my stomach twist knowing how easily he recycled moments that felt personal. Outside, fresh air slammed into my lungs like reality finally setting in. My hands trembled as I took a few steps away from the cafe, letting the noise fade behind me. I stood there for a moment staring at the pavement, trying to understand how a perfect date transformed into something humiliating and unsettling so fast. I checked my phone instinctively, and of course there were messages lighting up the screen from him. Excuses, justifications, words spilling out too late. I didn't open them. Nothing he said could undo that scene or erase the way I felt in that moment. I walked toward the bus stop, head buzzing, replaying everything in my mind. The care he took to seem thoughtful. The way he smiled. The warm tone he used when speaking. All of it felt like pre-written material now. I kept thinking about how many girls had probably sat in that same spot this week, thinking they were special. How many laughed at his jokes, blushed at his compliments, believed his soft stories about wanting something real. It made me feel gross, like I was just another scene in his repetitive routine. When I finally reached my live, I kicked off my shoes and dropped onto my bed, staring at the ceiling. I didn't even feel sad, just drained. Like someone hit reset on my trust in one afternoon. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a long paragraph from him trying to defend himself, twisting the situation, making it sound less calculated than it was. I swiped the notification away and blocked his number without hesitation. He didn't deserve another second of my time. I lay there thinking about how easily people can manipulate moments that feel genuine. How they can copy and paste intimacy until it loses all meaning. How they can convince you you're special while lining up the next backup just in case. The thought that stuck with me most was how convincing he was. How believable. How perfectly he played the role. It made me wonder how many other people were still out there thinking he was their perfect date right now. And that realization annoyed me more than the embarrassment ever could. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there quietly, letting the weight of it settle, knowing the story would make people laugh one day but still feel strange when I tell it. Some dates don't just go wrong. They unravel in front of everyone.
The whole night was meant to be calm, like one of those slow evenings that makes you forget the world even exists. I remember pacing around my live a little longer than needed, fluffing cushions that didn't even need fluffing, pretending I wasn't nervous even though my hands kept feeling awkward and restless. She said she liked chill plans, so the idea of a cozy movie night felt safe, simple, easy. No pressure, no loud crowd, just two people and a screen. I should have known the quiet never lasts. She arrived with that soft smile that makes you think everything's normal. Comfortable hoodie, messy hair, the kind of look that says I didn't try too hard but also totally did. We laughed about random stuff, settled onto the sofa, picked some random film neither of us really cared about. I remember the glow of the screen washing over her face, her legs tucked under her like she'd done this a million times. It felt almost normal. Too normal. About 20 minutes into the film there was a heavy pound on the door. Not a polite knock, not a friendly tap, but that sharp aggressive banging that makes your whole body tense even before you stand up. I paused the film, heart already beating faster, and walked toward the door thinking maybe someone had the wrong flat. The banging didn't stop. When I opened it, my neighbor stood there with a face twisted in anger, eyes red, jaw tight. They barely looked at me properly. Their stare cut straight past my shoulder toward her. The words that followed weren't calm or confused. They were accusing, loud, serious, claiming she'd been stealing parcels from the building for weeks and that they were done pretending it was coincidence. My brain froze. I stood there confused, looking back at her for some sort of reaction. Her face drained instantly, color gone, smile erased. She didn't laugh it off. She didn't look shocked. She looked scared. That's when the air changed. Before I could even process what was happening, the neighbor backed away slightly and pulled their phone out, already tapping at it like they weren't joking around. Moments later there were flashing lights reflecting off the stairwell walls, that uncomfortable red and blue that instantly turns your stomach into a knot. The police arrived fast, like this had been building up for a while. They stepped inside without any warmth, eyes scanning my flat then landing on her. I felt like the whole room shrunk as their presence filled it. The cozy vibe vanished, leaving awkward silence and tension thick enough to feel. She started pacing, hands trembling, eyes flicking around like she was planning an escape that didn't exist. I tried to stay calm, but inside I felt lost, like I'd been thrown into someone else's mess with no warning. Then it happened. She moved toward the doorway, still barefoot from curling up on my sofa earlier, and tried to bolt. Sudden, panicked, desperate. Bare feet slapping against the cold hallway tiles as she pushed past me. The officers reacted instantly, stepping forward, blocking her path, motioning for her to stop. The noise echoed down the corridor, neighbors peeking through their doors, curiosity painting their faces. It felt unreal watching someone I barely knew try to flee from my own doorstep while police filled the hall. My heart hammered so loud I could barely think straight. This wasn't awkward. This wasn't uncomfortable. This was full chaos. She didn't even look back at me. Not once. Her only focus was escape. That alone told me enough. The officers questioned her strictly while the neighbor stood nearby with crossed arms and that fierce look of someone who felt proven right. They mentioned previous incidents, missing packages, recorded footage, unusual timing. Everything started stacking up like a puzzle snapping into place. I just stood there, silent, processing how a simple movie night turned into this scene. The cushions on the sofa, the paused screen, the half-eaten snacks on the table. It all looked so calm compared to what was happening right in front of me. My hands felt cold and unsteady. I kept replaying earlier moments in my head. Little things I ignored. How she asked about my building security. How she seemed overly interested in the hallway layout. How her eyes lingered near the door buzzer before even stepping inside. I read the signs wrong. Or maybe I didn't want to see them. The officers led her away, still barefoot, footsteps faint against the floor as she disappeared down the stairs. Her hoodie dragged slightly behind her, like her whole night collapsed into a rushed mistake. The moment the stairwell fell quiet, the tension stayed. My neighbor muttered something under their breath, still annoyed, still shaking their head, then walked away satisfied like justice had finally caught up. I closed the door slowly, my mind still spinning. I stood in the hallway for a few seconds before walking back into my living room, staring at the paused movie still frozen on some random scene. The silence felt heavier now. The sofa looked wrong. Everything in the room felt tainted, like it remembered what just happened. My phone buzzed with notifications I hadn't even noticed coming in earlier. Messages from friends, random alerts, but none from her. Part of me almost expected a rushed excuse or desperate explanation, but there was nothing. Just silence. I sank onto the sofa, letting my head fall back, trying to slow my breathing. The whole situation replayed again and again in my mind. The knock. The accusations. The attempt to run. The police lights. Each piece slotting perfectly into place in the worst way. I couldn't shake the image of her face when the door opened. That panic. That guilt. That look that said she knew exactly why the knock happened. I got up and wandered toward the door again, like I needed to double-check it was really locked this time. The hallway now looked ordinary again, like nothing had disturbed it. But I knew better. Even later that night, when I tried to distract myself with my phone or random clips, my focus kept drifting back to that moment she tried to escape barefoot. The desperation, the speed, the disbelief that this was happening in my own space. A place that minutes before felt safe and calm. I never heard from her again. No apology, no reason, no explanation. Just gone. Maybe that was for the best. Some people don't deserve to tell their side after pulling you into their chaos. I sat there alone, the film still untouched, the snacks cold, and realized I didn't even care how the night was meant to go anymore. Everything about it changed the second that knock shattered the quiet. A cozy plan turned into a nightmare without warning. And the scariest part wasn't the police or the neighbor. It was how easy it was for someone to walk into your space, smile at you, and turn out to be someone else completely.
I knew something felt off from the moment I decided to come early. It wasn't even that deep, I just hate rushing and didn't want to show up sweaty and stressed. I told him I'd be there on time, but I left my live a good 20 minutes before anyway, thinking I'd just sit somewhere and relax before he arrived. The park was quiet, almost too quiet for the weekend, with soft wind brushing through the trees and that faint smell of grass and damp soil hanging in the air. It felt calm on the surface, like a peaceful setting for a cute first date, but my chest felt weirdly tight the whole walk there. He picked the spot, said it was his favorite place, claimed it was underrated and peaceful. That should have sounded sweet, but it just felt slightly overplanned, like he'd thought about the image more than the actual moment. I brushed it off because I didn't want to overthink before even seeing him properly. I found the blanket already laid out near a big tree and a basket sitting there like something straight out of a staged Instagram post. It looked too perfect, too planned, but I smiled to myself and sat down anyway. I started checking my phone, scrolling through random stuff while waiting, pretending I wasn't low-key nervous. That's when I noticed movement. At first I thought it was just someone walking past or a dog running wild, but the rustling sounded close. Too close. I looked up and saw someone ducking slightly behind the tree just a few meters away. My stomach dropped because I instantly knew it was him. Same hoodie, same build, same messy haircut. But he wasn't walking toward me. He was peeking around the tree holding his phone up, camera facing my direction. His lips were moving, whispering into it like he was narrating something. Every now and then he'd glance down at his screen then back at me, adjusting his angle like I was some background prop. For a second my brain couldn't process it. I just sat there frozen, staring at a guy who was supposed to be my date, filming me like I wasn't even a real person. The words loyalty and YouTube drifted through the air faintly and my heart started racing hard. Testing loyalty for YouTube. My body went cold. I felt humiliated, confused, angry, all at once. I wasn't some social experiment. I wasn't a thumbnail. I wasn't content. And the worst part was knowing he planned this. He didn't just randomly pick me. He chose me for a test. He kept whispering, like he was setting up a scenario, creating a story that I never agreed to be part of. I read his earlier messages in my head and suddenly every compliment felt fake, every sweet line felt calculated. It wasn't about me at all. It was about views, clicks, attention. I stood up slowly, and the moment he noticed, his eyes widened. The confidence he had while hiding behind that tree slipped away fast. He stepped out like he was about to laugh it off, but the damage was already done. I didn't need explanations. I saw it clearly. My hands shook as I picked up my bag. The peaceful park suddenly felt claustrophobic, like every leaf had eyes watching me. He lowered his phone slightly, still holding it though, like he wasn't even fully ready to drop the act. That almost hurt more. I walked away from the blanket without grabbing anything. That picnic wasn't cute anymore, it was just a stage he built for his little test. Every step away from him felt heavier as the reality sank in. He wasn't interested in getting to know me. He wanted to see how I'd react if someone walked over, if someone flirted, if someone tested my patience. Loyalty like it was a game show prize. My head kept replaying the moment I first saw him hiding, whispering, creeping behind that tree like I was some animal in a nature documentary. It felt invasive in a way I didn't know how to describe. I didn't say a word. I didn't give him the satisfaction of a reaction he could edit and twist. I kept walking through the park until I reached the path near the road. The air felt heavier with every minute. I glanced back once and saw him still standing there, phone in hand, probably deciding if this would still make a dramatic clip. The whole thing felt disgusting. I checked my phone and saw messages flooding in from him already, trying to turn it into a joke, downplay it, call it a harmless test. I didn't open them. I didn't want to see his spin. I didn't want to hear his logic. Nothing about this felt playful or fun. As I walked home, the sky started shifting from warm to dull gray and I felt that sinking weight settle deeper. I kept thinking about how normal I felt getting ready, how I actually considered bringing snacks and making it special. The thought made me cringe now. Back at my live, I dropped my bag and sat on my bed staring at the wall. My phone buzzed again and again, but I let it vibrate itself exhausted. I kept imagining his channel, his comments, people laughing at my reactions or judging my face or speculating about my personality based on a moment I never agreed to give them. I don't even know how long I sat there just thinking. Not crying, not shouting, just feeling played. The idea that he'd planned it from the first message made everything feel fake, like our whole conversation was a script he rehearsed. And the worst part? Knowing he would probably do it to someone else after me. Another girl. Another blanket. Another tree. Another fake connection for the sake of attention. The park that once felt calm now felt tainted in my mind. Even the thought of that tree gave me chills, remembering his face half hidden, whispering like the whole thing was just entertainment. I eventually blocked his number. I didn't want closure. I didn't want explanations. I didn't want him trying to make a joke out of disrespect. Some things don't deserve a response. They deserve silence. That night I lay there scrolling through random clips online and saw just how many people do stuff like this for views. Loyalty tests, pranks, setups. It made me feel sick knowing I almost became just another screenshot in someone's video titled with clickbait words and fake sympathy. I didn't tell my friends straight away. Not because I was ashamed, but because I didn't even know how to explain it without sounding unreal. It felt like something you'd read about, not something you'd actually lived through. But it happened. And I was done being part of someone else's show.
3. Night lane mistake. It was one of those random late-night plans that felt exciting for no real reason, like the type of thing you go along with just because you're bored and the sky looks kind of cool. I remember sitting on my bed in my live scrolling through my phone, half tempted to cancel, half curious to see if this girl was any different from the rest. She had that chill vibe in her messages, always sending quick replies like she wasn't trying too hard, which somehow made me trust her more, even though I knew that made no sense. She suggested a drive instead of sitting somewhere boring, said it was her favorite way to clear her head. I thought that sounded calm, low pressure, no awkward table staring. So I said yes. Simple decision, nothing dramatic. But something about the way she sent her location felt rushed, like she just wanted me there fast without thinking it through. When I pulled up, she was already standing outside in a hoodie, keys dangling from her fingers, leaning against a dark car that didn't match her personality at all. It looked too clean, too polished, like it belonged to someone who cared a lot about their image. She smiled casually and got in, acting like we'd known each other longer than a few days of messaging. She said the car was sorted and I didn't question it. I mean, why would I? People have cars, that's normal. I buckled up and we rolled off into the quiet streets, the kind of roads that feel empty but still slightly tense. The air was cool, windows down just enough to let that fresh night breeze brush against my face. Music was low, not too awkward, not too loud either. We talked about random stuff. Her job, her friends, the annoying neighbor who always stared at her when she took the bins out. Everything felt light, normal, even a bit fun. She laughed easily and I started relaxing into the night like nothing could go wrong. I should have known better than to trust the calm. About 20 minutes in, we turned onto a long stretch of road with barely any streetlights, just the soft glow of distant shops and the faint reflection of the moon on the windscreen. That's when I noticed flashing lights behind us. Blue and red cutting through the dark like sharp warning signs. My stomach dropped instantly. I hadn't even done anything. No speeding, no swerving, nothing dodgy. She noticed too and tensed up beside me, hands gripping the wheel tighter. The car slowed and pulled over, gravel crunching beneath the tires. The air changed straight away. No more chill vibe. Just pressure. 2 officers walked up, serious faces, hand hovering near their waist. Their eyes scanned the car, then focused on the number plate. They explained calmly that the vehicle was flagged and linked to a recent hit and run a few streets away. My brain stuttered trying to process it. Hit and run. That wasn't some small misunderstanding. That was serious. I looked at her, waiting for her to laugh, to say there'd been a mistake, anything normal. But she didn't. Her face drained of all color, jaw clenched, eyes wide with panic she was trying and failing to hide. Before the officers even stepped back, she leaned toward me slightly, her voice low, shaking, and her whole body language screamed desperate. She admitted it wasn't even her car and made it painfully clear she wanted me to stay quiet and not say a word. I felt my chest tighten. Nothing about this made sense. She'd acted like this drive was casual, like this was just a fun little idea, but now I was sitting in a vehicle tied to someone fleeing a crash, and the girl I barely knew was silently pleading for my silence. My mind raced through every possible outcome. Getting dragged into something I knew nothing about, being questioned for hours, my name attached to something I didn't do. It felt unreal, like a nightmare you can't wake up from. I remembered read a story once online about someone who got caught up in a similar situation and it ended messy. I never thought I'd be anywhere near that kind of drama. The officers kept inspecting the car, walking around it, noting every detail. They asked for documents, for proof, for anything that explained why this vehicle was here. Her hands trembled as she rummaged through the glove box, pulling out random papers that clearly weren't meant for her. The tension was so thick I could almost hear my own heartbeat. She kept avoiding eye contact, biting her lip, glancing at me like I was now part of her problem. And maybe I was. Sitting there felt like being trapped in someone else's mistake with no clear exit. I didn't even know if the hit and run had happened tonight or earlier, just that somehow we were connected to it now. Time moved slow. Painfully slow. The road felt colder, darker, like the whole night was closing in around us. The flashing lights reflected onto her face, making her look completely different from the chilled girl I met an hour ago. This version was scared, cornered, exposed. The longer it went on, the more it dawned on me that this drive had never been as harmless as I thought. She wasn't just borrowing a car casually. She'd stepped into something risky and dragged me with her without asking. The casual jokes, the relaxed tone, it all felt fake now. Eventually, after more checking and tense silence, the officers made it clear things weren't adding up. They told us the car would be investigated further and that statements might be needed. I felt my whole body stiffen. I hadn't signed up for any of this. I just wanted a simple night drive. Her face dropped even more when they stepped away for a moment. She looked at me again with that same panicked plea, her eyes begging for loyalty she hadn't earned. But I just stared ahead, overwhelmed, unsure where loyalty even belonged in a situation like this. When everything finally eased enough for us to pull away, the vibe was dead. Silent. The music off. No jokes, no awkward filler talk, just thick heavy air pressing between us. I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel calm. I felt like I'd stepped into a bad story too early and couldn't skip forward to the end. She dropped me off not long after, barely looking at me as I stepped out. The car rolled away into the dark, leaving that strange echo of flashing light burned into my eyes. I stood there a moment, just breathing, trying to slow my thoughts. Walking back to my live felt strange. Everything that happened replayed in my head like a glitching clip. Her confession without words, the officers, the tension, the idea that something serious had happened before I even met her. I wondered where that car really came from and what else she hadn't told me. Later that night my phone buzzed with messages from her, trying to soften what happened, offering half excuses and shaky reasoning. I didn't reply. I didn't feel angry or sad. Just detached, like I'd accidentally stepped into someone else's chaos and got out before it swallowed me fully. Some nights stay with you for no good reason. This one stayed because it felt like a warning I never saw coming. A calm road, a smooth ride, and suddenly everything spins out of control without asking. Do you want to start the next one called The Quiet Booth Stare?
It started with one of those random decisions that feel harmless but somehow stick in your head the whole drive there. I remember standing in my living room mirror adjusting my top and telling myself this was just a chill first date, nothing deep, nothing serious, just a quiet bar and a guy who seemed normal enough through messages. He had that soft humor vibe and sent lazy selfies like he couldn't be bothered to try too hard. That should have been fine, but something about the way he typed always felt rushed, like his attention was split even when he was talking to me. Still, I ignored the small doubts and went. The bar he chose wasn't lively or loud, it was one of those dim places with soft yellow lights and sticky wooden tables that probably saw better days. Barely any music, just low background noise and people murmuring like they were trying not to be overheard. It gave off calm energy, the kind that tricks you into relaxing too much. He was already there when I walked in, sat in a booth with his phone in his hand, thumb moving fast like he was finishing something last minute. He looked up, smiled, did that awkward half wave, and put the phone down. First impressions weren't bad. Clean clothes, tired eyes, slightly nervous body language. I could work with that. We started off okay. He asked basic stuff, where I worked, where I grew up, normal get-to-know-you things. But every few minutes his hand would drift back under the table and his eyes would drop. Not long, just enough to make me notice. At first I thought it was work or maybe his mate, but it kept happening. Subtle at first, then more obvious, like he forgot he was even on a date. I tried to ignore it, kept chatting, kept sipping my drink, pretending not to care. But the longer it went on, the more it bugged me. Every time I'd start a sentence he'd nod, but his mind felt somewhere else. His phone would light up faintly under the table and his face would shift into this focused expression he didn't have when he looked at me. I laughed it off in my head, telling myself I was overthinking. First dates are awkward, people get nervous, whatever. But something didn't sit right. It felt like I was sharing him with someone invisible. About 40 minutes in, I told him I was heading to the bathroom. He barely reacted, just nodded, still angled toward the table like his world was glowing from his screen. I walked across the bar, weaving past quiet couples and bored-looking staff, and that's when I saw something that flipped my mood completely. Near the back hallway, just outside the bathroom area, he was standing close to another woman. Too close. His back was half turned, but I knew it was him straight away. Same jacket, same posture. His hand was on her waist and her head tilted up toward his face like they were sharing something they definitely shouldn't be sharing in public. And then it happened. I saw it. Him leaning in and kissing her like it was normal, like I didn't exist 5 meters away. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I might actually faint. I froze there, half hidden behind a corner, watching something I wasn't meant to see. The woman pulled back and said something loud enough for me to hear bits of it, clearly annoyed and upset. She mentioned how she thought this was meant to be their anniversary and how stupid she felt for even agreeing to meet here. Her voice echoed slightly and a couple nearby glanced over. He looked panicked, eyes darting around like a trapped animal. And then his eyes landed on me. For a split second we just stared at each other. No words, no excuses, just raw awkward silence stretching forever. I felt heat rush to my face, not even sadness at that point, just humiliation and disbelief all tangled together. He wasn't even trying to hide it. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was straight disrespect in its most lazy form. I didn't storm off straight away. I just stood there, letting the moment burn into my brain. The woman beside him looked confused now, then annoyed again as realization hit her too. I didn't need to hear anything more to know the truth. He had double-booked a date and didn't care enough to plan either properly. I turned back to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, stared at my reflection and tried to calm my breathing. My heart was racing, but in that numb way where anger and shock blur together. I kept thinking about all the small signs. The way his phone never left his hand, the way he barely looked at me when I spoke, the rushed replies to my texts earlier. All of it made sense now. When I walked back toward our table, he was already sitting again, pretending nothing happened, trying to look normal like he could reset the whole situation. His phone was back in his hand, but now his grip was tight, nervous. I didn't sit down. I just stood there for a moment, looking at him, trying to process how fake the whole night had been. The other woman didn't follow us. She stayed back near the corner, probably just as embarrassed as I was. 2 people caught in the middle of the same messy lie. I walked away without giving him the reaction he probably expected. No scene, no shouting, no tears. Just quiet disappointment and that heavy feeling you get when you realize someone never deserved your time. He didn't chase me, didn't stop me, didn't even try properly to explain. That alone said everything. Outside, the air felt cold and sharp against my skin. I stood there for a few seconds, staring at the bar sign glowing weak above the door, replaying the kiss in my mind like a loop I couldn't shut down. It wasn't just that he cheated. It was how casual it felt. How planned it seemed. Like he enjoyed juggling people. I walked home instead of ordering a ride, just to clear my head. Every step felt heavier than the last. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I didn't care. I already knew what it would be. Apologies, excuses, some lazy explanation that didn't change what I saw with my own eyes. The whole thing felt unreal. The way a simple first date turned into something messy and draining within an hour. I thought about how I dressed up, how I convinced myself to go even when I wasn't feeling it fully, how I still tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. It felt embarrassing but also weirdly empowering knowing I walked away without letting it turn into more chaos. When I got back to my live, I kicked my shoes off and collapsed onto my bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence buzzing in my ears. I kept picturing the look on his face when he got caught. That quick flash of guilt and panic before the mask tried to slide back on. People like that don't change overnight. They just get better at hiding. I didn't cry. I didn't text him back. I just let the whole thing sit there in my head like a warning sign for next time. Not every chill vibe is genuine. Not every quiet bar means peace. Sometimes it just means you get front row seats to someone else's mess. And as much as I hated that night, I knew one thing for sure. I'd rather walk away early than stay and pretend something broken was worth fixing.
1. Glass and glare. It started with that weird mix of nerves and hype you get when you know you might regret something but still go ahead anyway. I had just read my messages again for the 10th time, checking her selfies and laughing at how normal she looked, like a regular girl who just happened to be into late-night drives and cheesy pasta. Nothing about her gave off danger vibes. No drama captions, no edgy quotes, just plain stuff, mirror pics and random jokes. That should have made me calm, but for some reason my stomach felt tight, like when you skip lunch and your body reminds you too late. Still, I grabbed my jacket and went out to meet her because canceling felt weak and I already told my boys I was going on a proper first date. She was waiting outside her block looking bored, phone in hand, pretending not to care. When she got in my car, she acted like we already knew each other, adjusting the seat and fixing her hair in the mirror, talking about how hungry she was and how she hated staying in on weekends. I liked that she seemed relaxed. It made the whole thing feel less awkward. We joked about life, about bad dates, about people who take things too serious. Her laugh was loud and a bit messy, which I didn't mind. It felt real. We chose this low-key restaurant near the edge of town, not fancy but not dodgy either. Warm lights, open windows, faint music that sounded like it was on repeat since 2009. The kind of place where nobody cares what you order as long as you pay. Perfect for a first date where you don't want to look like you're trying too hard. We sat near the window and she kept tapping her nails on the table while scrolling through her phone, saying she was posting a quick story. I didn't think anything of it. People do that all the time. The food came and the mood was good, better than I expected. She kept telling random stories about her flat and the girl she lived with who never does the washing up. I was half listening, half watching the street outside since it was busy and I like people watching. Then I noticed a pair of guys by the bar whispering and glancing our way. I thought maybe they recognized me or she knew them. She didn't react though, just kept eating like normal. A few minutes later things started to feel slightly off. The waiter walked past our table twice more than needed. The same guy who took our order kept looking at her face, not in a flirty way but in this confused, uncertain way, like he was trying to place her from somewhere. She caught it too and rolled her eyes, telling me people always stare at her. I laughed it off, telling her she must just look famous or something. She smiled but it looked forced for a moment, then she went back to pretending everything was chill. Out of nowhere the restaurant energy shifted. You know that moment when the vibe just drops and you feel it without anyone saying a word. The front door swung open hard and suddenly there were voices and movement, chairs scraping, people gasping. Police in dark uniforms walked in quick and serious, scanning faces while the whole place went quiet like someone pressed mute on life. My heart started racing even though I knew I'd done nothing wrong. She stayed sitting, still chewing, still calm like this was part of the evening plan. That made it worse. One of the officers looked straight at our table and nodded to another. The waiter who kept staring earlier suddenly stepped forward and pointed at her, not saying anything out loud but nodding firmly, eyes wide like he just solved a puzzle. I turned to her, expecting surprise, panic, anything normal. Instead she kept her head down and wiped her mouth with her napkin, acting like they weren't about to make a scene. My brain was screaming questions but my body just froze. The officers walked closer and stood beside the table, their presence heavy and sharp. People around us pulled out their phones and I could feel dozens of eyes burning into us. I noticed someone whispering about a viral clip, something about smashed car windows and a hooded girl caught on CCTV earlier that night. It hit me slowly like cold water down my spine. They thought she was that person. The girl I picked up 10 minutes ago was now being compared to some window-smashing stranger online. She finally looked up, still trying to smile like she could charm her way out of it. I could tell she was pretending, putting on this fake calm layer like makeup you wear when you don't want anyone to see you're scared. The officer started asking questions, but I couldn't even focus on the words. All I could think was how unreal this felt, like something you'd be reading about on a messy forum post or see in a low-quality livestream. My plate sat untouched now, food going cold while everyone watched the chaos unfold. She kept straightening her hair and adjusting her jacket, avoiding eye contact, acting like if she ignored the situation hard enough it might fade. But it didn't. The waiter kept gesturing, describing something, likely the clip he recognized her from. I could tell by his hands he was sure of it. I felt embarrassed, scared, confused all at once. I didn't know whether to defend her or back away. I didn't even know if she was guilty or just unlucky enough to look the same. The room felt smaller and smaller, like the walls were closing in. Even the music had stopped, leaving just awkward silence and murmurs. They asked her to stand and she moved slowly, still trying to act normal, like this was just a misunderstanding. Her smile faded slightly, but she still pretended. When she stood beside the officer, I finally saw how tense her shoulders were, how her jaw tightened. It was all an act. She was worried. And that scared me more than anything. People began whispering again, phones lifted higher. I felt like background noise in my own nightmare date. I kept thinking about the drive here, how casual she was, how normal it all felt. Now she stood surrounded by uniforms while strangers judged every move. Eventually they walked her toward the door, still questioning, still serious. She never once looked back at me. No apology, no explanation, nothing. Just that same blank confidence, like she could outsmart the moment. I sat there alone with a half-eaten plate and everyone looking at me like I was part of the drama. I didn't know what to do, so I just paid and left. Outside the air felt heavy and unreal. I stood by my car for a bit, replaying everything, wondering if the whole night was a mistake from the start. Her smile, her jokes, the way she acted like everything was normal even as her world cracked in front of strangers. I drove home in silence, radio off, hands tight on the wheel. My phone buzzed with messages from friends asking how the date went. I didn't even know how to explain it without sounding mad. All I knew was that this wasn't some funny story to laugh about later. It felt wrong, unsettling, like I'd walked into someone else's mess by accident and couldn't wipe it off. When I finally reached my live, I sat on my bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about her face as the waiter pointed her out, thinking about how calm she stayed while everyone else panicked. Part of me still wondered if she was actually that girl from the clip or if she was just unlucky. I guess I'd never know. All I know is that first dates aren't supposed to end with flashing lights, shame, and strangers filming you like it's entertainment. And I definitely didn't expect mine to turn into something that felt more like a bad rumor than a night out. Do you want to start the next story called Midnight Profile Swap?